media, NFL star Ray Rice was suspended for a mere 2 games for assaulting his then-fiancee, now his wife. While discussing that suspension, ESPN's Stephen A. Smith made these controversial comments about domestic violence.
We got to also make sure that you can do your part to do whatever you can do to try to make sure it doesn't happen. We know they're wrong. We know they're criminal. We know they probably deserve to be in jail. In Ray Rice's case, he probably deserves more than the 2-game suspension, which we both acknowledged. But at the same time, we also have to make sure that we learn as much as we can about elements of provocation. Not that there's real provocation, but the elements of provocation, you got to make sure that you address it, because what we've got to do is do what we can to try to prevent the situation from happening in any way.
Okay, so ESPN has announced that Smith will not appear on air for 1 week. Question is that enough? Joining me now, civil rights attorney Gloria Allred, Marco Mara, CNN legal analyst, and a criminal defense attorney, Mr. Brian Stelter, CNN senior media correspondent and host of Reliable Sources that I watch every Sunday morning.
Thank you, Don.
Brian, listen, after a few days of this swirling controversy, ESPN acted today. Stephen A. Smith is off the air for a week. Why did ESPN take this action?
I'm a little confused by the timing, because he came on to the air on Monday morning, read his apology, and then went on back to work like nothing had happened. He came on again today, but then this afternoon ESPN said they decided to keep him off the air for a week. They don't use the word suspension, but this is clearly a suspension. He's away for a week, he's on the bench, and he's back this time.
Was it because of the fallout, you think, that they had a change of mind?
You know, one of the things that the ESPN president said in his internal memo was that he talked to a lot of people within ESPN the last 2 days, including a lot of women at the network. He talked to the employee resource group there, got their feedback, and I do think maybe after getting a lot of people's feedback, you can see it, you know, here in this statement, they say he'll return next Wednesday. I think after getting all that feedback, maybe that's why they decided to do this. But I think if they were going to do this, they should have announced it on Monday when he apologized, rather than have him go back to work for 2 days.
Yeah, and they never said suspension. Did you see suspension anywhere?
No, they're very careful not to use that word. Okay. But, by the way, they admitted to suspension if you really ask.
Okay. Gloria, many people, and Brian just talked about it, many people, including some of Stephen A.'s female colleagues, were taken aback by what he said. What does it imply when you say a woman provoked a man?
Well, I think that that's something he should have explained, by the way, in his, what I'll call, another non-apology apology, which I don't think really addressed the issue of what he meant by we've got to learn more about the elements of provocation, suggesting that that's the way to prevent battering. Guess what? Here's my message to him, Don. The message is that women are not to be blamed for domestic violence. They don't provoke it. And this is always what batterers say. Batterers say, she provoked it. Why didn't she iron my shirt the right way? Why didn't she have my dinner on time? Why didn't she answer the phone when I called her? This is the reason that I'm hitting her. She deserves it. Okay. And this is what he has to explain and didn't explain in his so-called apology.
Let me ask you, what if the woman hit first? Is that a provocation?
Doesn't matter. Not enough.
No? Okay. So then let's talk about that. You kind of mumbled it, but I'm going to get your response to that, because first I want to play this, right? He twice tried to unsuccessfully apologize on Twitter before issuing an apology on air, but he is not the only one stepping into this controversy. Listen to Whoopi Goldberg, what she said on The View, and then we'll talk about it.
You have to teach women, do not live with this idea that men have the chivalry thing still with them. Right. Don't assume that that's still in place. Right. So don't be surprised if you hit a man and he hits you back. You don't hit it. Listen, I'm sorry. You hit somebody, they hit you back. Okay, don't be surprised.
Listen, so Whoopi said, I'm not advocating that anyone hit anyone. No one should be hitting anyone. But to my point where I said, what if the woman hit the guy first? And we don't know exactly what happened in that elevator, but does it matter in any way legally in a domestic violence case, Mark, if one side provoked another side?
Well, we as a society have to say it doesn't matter, just like in domestic violence and in rape. If we don't have a very clear line, if we say well, maybe she deserved it, maybe she provoked, maybe she screamed too loud, maybe she slapped me first, and all we're really doing is allowing domestic violence to continue. Just like we talk about with a rape case, if no means no, domestic violence means even if you have a right to, even if she hits you first, it is still a crime, you still don't do it, you still be above it. That's the clear line we just simply have to have.
Yeah, and let's answer the question that we stated here in the beginning, Gloria. Was it enough? Many fans thought that this was way too light a punishment for an assault. Michael Vick did almost 2 years in Leavenworth in prison for dogfighting. Smoking marijuana in the NFL will get you a 4-game suspension, but assaulting your fiancée only gets you a 2-game suspension?
Well, excellent point. There's no proportionality. Just another sign of how little we value women and violence against women, that it's only a 2-game suspension. You know, violence against women really matters. Women across the country are having bones broken. They're having their noses punched in. They're often having their lives taken by men who are beating them. And often in these situations, the men are much taller, they're much heavier, they're much physically stronger, and they're beating on women who have done nothing to deserve it. Just the fact that they're alive and breathing and the man can beat them is what causes the man to beat them. He has to know nothing they say or do can provoke him. He's responsible for his own reaction.
You're describing horrible situations. You know what surprises me,
Quickly,
Don,
Brian, go
on
ahead.
Facebook? So much of the feedback I'm seeing from people is from women, some of whom say he was making an important point, and yet I think one of the many mistakes he made was he was a man speaking about this to another man on TV. There were no women who were discussing it with him.
And
that's the much more.
And he was doing it under a time limit.
That one's now happening online, but not on TV.
He was doing it under a time limit like this segment. Thank you, guys. We'll be right back.